Everyone assumed Zeta-4 was lifeless, until a hidden civilization sent a signal. Part 2. The Coming Darkness. The arrival of the UES Vigilant had transformed the situation from a scientific expedition into a potential diplomatic crisis. From the command center of the Zentari habitat, Elijah watched the feed from the horizon, showing the military vessel's imposing silhouette against the stars. "Captain Thorne is demanding that we return to the horizon immediately," Naomi reported through the comm. "He's citing Regulation 15B of the Exploration Directive, no unauthorized contact with potential sentient species. Remind the captain that first contact has already been established," Elijah replied, keeping his voice steady. Hasty action now could jeopardize peaceful relations. Beside him, Ambassador Vekere observed the exchange with that unreadable liquid metal face. Several other Zentari had gathered around them, their plate-like exteriors shifting colors in what Elijah had begun to recognize as a form of emotional expression. The predominant hue now was a deep indigo, concern, perhaps, or apprehension. "Your military leader fears us," Vekere stated simply. "He fears what he doesn't understand," Elijah corrected. "It's a common human reaction." Raj, who had been analyzing data from the Zentari's monitoring systems, looked up from his work. "Commander, these readings are troubling. The tectonic instability Ambassador Vekere mentioned is accelerating. Based on these measurements, we have weeks, not months, before critical failure." Vekere's surface rippled. "We have been tracking the progression. Your analysis confirms our worst fears." A tremor ran through the chamber, subtle but unmistakable. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. "That's the third one in the past hour," noted a Zentari scientist named Thilak. Unlike Vekere, his voice emerged as a series of harmonics that the translation system rendered into speech. "The frequency is increasing." Elijah made his decision. "Dr. Winters, I need you to transmit all our data on the Zentari civilization to Captain Thorne. Make sure he understands that we're dealing with an imminent humanitarian crisis." "Humanitarian," came the skeptical response from Naomi. "They're not human, Commander. Sentient beings facing extinction," Elijah clarified firmly. "The distinction is irrelevant." After a moment, Naomi replied, "Transmitting now. But I should warn you, Captain Thorne has already dispatched a shuttle. Lieutenant Commander Dominic Pierce and a security team are on their way to your location." Elijah muttered a curse. Pierce had a reputation as a hardliner, someone who viewed every unknown as a potential threat. How long until they arrive? 20 minutes, if they maintain current descent trajectory. Elijah turned to Vekere. "We're about to have company, and they may not be as diplomatic as we were. I need to understand exactly what help you need from us, and quickly." The liquid metal face shifted, forming patterns that suggested determination. "Come with me. There is something you must see to truly understand our situation." Vekere led Elijah and Raj deeper into the Zentari complex, through corridors that sloped downward at increasingly steep angles. The architecture changed as they descended, becoming less constructed and more integrated with the natural rock of Zeta-4. "These lower chambers were not built," Vekere explained as they passed through a particularly striking archway that seemed to flow organically from the surrounding stone. "They were grown, using our consciousness to guide the crystalline structures of this world." "Remarkable," Raj breathed, running a hand along a wall that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. "You can manipulate matter at the molecular level." "Not precisely. We suggest to it what form would be most harmonious. The rest happens naturally, over time." They finally emerged into a vast cavern, so large that the opposite wall was barely visible in the dim light. But what drew their attention was the floor, or rather, what had replaced it. A vast pool of the same luminescent liquid they had seen earlier stretched before them, but thousands of times larger. Waves of light and color moved across its surface in complex, ever-changing patterns. "This is the primary consciousness reservoir," Vekere said, her synthesized voice somehow conveying reverence. What you might call our collective soul. Elijah stared in awe. This is you. Yes. And no. It is us, but not all that we are. Think of it as the core from which we extend ourselves. Raj had pulled out his scanner, examining the readings with widening eyes. The energy patterns here match nothing in our databases. I don't even have words for it. Another tremor shook the cavern, stronger than the previous ones. Small fragments of rock fell from the ceiling, splashing into the pool. Where they made contact, the luminescent liquid briefly darkened, as if in pain. Each tremor damages the reservoir, Vekara explained, urgent concern evident in her tone. The crystalline matrix that allows our consciousness to maintain cohesion is fracturing. If it collapses completely, total consciousness failure, Thelak finished. Extinction. Elijah studied the cavern, noting the network of cracks already visible in the rock walls. What do you need from us specifically? Your species has developed technologies for stabilizing planetary crusts on your colonial worlds, Vekara replied. Resonance dampeners, tectonic stress redistributors. Such devices, adapted for Zeta-4's composition, could prevent the complete collapse of these chambers. Or, Thelak added, if stabilization proves impossible, technology to transfer our consciousness to a more stable medium. Your quantum storage systems might be adapted to house at least a portion of our collective. Raj looked skeptical. Even our most advanced quantum systems couldn't begin to approach the complexity I'm reading here. We'd be talking about a partial transfer at best. Some survival is preferable to none, Vekara stated simply. Elijah's calm crackled to life. Commander, Naomi's voice was tense. The Vigilance shuttle has landed approximately 1 kilometer from your position. Lieutenant Commander Pierce is demanding immediate contact. Put him through, Elijah replied. A new voice, clipped and authoritative, filled the calm. Commander Reeves, this is Lieutenant Commander Pierce. You are in violation of at least 7 Union regulations. I am ordering you and Specialist Patul to withdraw from the alien structure immediately and prepare for extraction. Lieutenant Commander, we're in the middle of a first contact situation with a peaceful, advanced civilization that is facing an existential crisis. I respectfully request that you join us here for a proper briefing before any decisions are made. Negative, Commander. Our orders are clear. The Union Security Council has declared Zeta-4 off-limits pending full assessment of the potential threat posed by this unexpected development. Elijah exchanged a glance with Raj. The Security Council shouldn't even have been informed yet, let alone had time to issue orders. Something's not right, he muttered to Raj. They're moving too quickly, with too little information. Captain Thorne must have had prior knowledge, Raj suggested quietly, or orders we weren't privy to. The realization hit Elijah like a physical blow. They already knew about the Zentari. This isn't first contact at all. Vekara's liquid metal face shifted to a pattern Elijah hadn't seen before, sharp angles and rapid movement that suggested alarm. Your people have been observing us. For how long? I don't know, Elijah admitted. But it would explain why the Vigilant arrived so quickly after we landed. Another tremor, stronger than any before, shook the cavern. A large section of ceiling collapsed, narrowly missing them and sending a spray of rock fragments into the consciousness reservoir. The luminescent pool reacted violently, waves of deep red pulsing outward from the impact points. Commander, Lieutenant Commander Pierce's voice had taken on a note of urgency. Our sensors are detecting significant seismic activity at your location. Whatever you're doing down there, stop it immediately. We're not doing anything, Elijah replied tersely. The planet's tectonic instability is increasing. That's why we need to help these people, not threaten them. People is a generous term for energy constructs, Pierce responded coldly. Our preliminary assessment suggests they're manipulating you, Commander. The seismic activity coincides perfectly with your arrival, too perfectly to be coincidence. Elijah looked at Vekara, doubt creeping into his mind despite himself. Is that true? Did our arrival trigger this? The ambassador's form seemed to dim slightly. Not directly. But yes, there is a connection. Your ship's presence disturbed patterns we had established to temporarily stabilize the crust. We had hoped to explain once trust was established. You lured us here, Elijah realized. We called for help. Vekara corrected. From a species we believed might understand our plight. Was that wrong? Before Elijah could respond, the cavern was bathed in harsh light as a section of the wall exploded inward. Through the dust and debris emerged a squad of Union security forces in full combat gear, weapons raised. At their head stood a tall, severe-looking man with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Lieutenant Commander Pierce, I presume, Elijah said, stepping forward with his hands raised in a placating gesture. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you've been compromised by an alien intelligence, Pierce replied, his weapon trained steadily on Elijah. Stand down, Commander. That's an order. The Zentari had drawn back, clustering protectively around the edge of their consciousness reservoir. Vekara alone remained beside Elijah and Raj. These beings pose no threat, Elijah insisted. They're facing extinction and asked for our help. That's all. Pierce's expression remained impassive. Our intelligence suggests otherwise. These entities have been manipulating tectonic activity for their own purposes. The recent instability threatens Union mining interests in this sector. Mining interests? Raj echoed incredulously. Zeta-4 is supposed to be off-limits to all human activity. Officially, yes, Pierce acknowledged with a thin smile. Unofficially, the rare minerals found here are too valuable to ignore, particularly those with quantum entanglement properties, like the ones these creatures use to maintain their collective consciousness. The truth dawned on Elijah with sickening clarity. You're not here because you think they're dangerous. You're here because they're in the way. Another violent tremor shook the cavern, more powerful than any before. Large sections of the ceiling began to give way. The security team struggled to maintain their footing as the floor beneath them buckled. This whole structure is coming down, one of the soldiers shouted. Pierce's cool demeanor finally cracked. Everyone out. Back to the shuttle. As the security team began a hasty retreat, Elijah turned to Vekara. We need to evacuate your people. How much of the consciousness reservoir can you move? Move. The liquid metal face formed patterns of distress. You don't understand. We cannot simply relocate. The reservoir is integrated with the specific mineral composition of this chamber. To separate us from it would be to destroy us. Then we have to stabilize this chamber right now. Elijah activated his comm. Dr. Winters, I need you to ransack the Horizons database. Find me anything on tectonic stabilization technology, specifically resonance dampeners. Commander, Pierce called from the crumbling entrance. I've ordered the Vigilant to prepare for orbital bombardment. This site has been deemed a critical security risk. You can't be serious. Elijah shouted over the noise of falling rock. There's an entire civilization here. A civilization sitting on top of resources vital to Union interests. Pierce replied coldly. The decision's been made. You have 15 minutes to evacuate before we target this location. As Pierce disappeared through the shattered wall, Raj turned to Elijah, his face pale with shock. They're going to destroy everything. We can't let that happen. Another section of ceiling collapsed, sending a massive chunk of rock plunging into the consciousness reservoir. The liquid erupted in waves of crimson and black, and all the Zentari present clutched at themselves as if in physical pain. The connection is failing. Vekara's voice had become distorted, the synthetic tones breaking apart. We are beginning to fragment. Elijah looked from the critically damaged reservoir to the exit, his mind racing. They couldn't evacuate the Zentari consciousness in time. They couldn't stabilize the chamber before Pierce's bombardment. And they couldn't fight off a Union military vessel with just the Horizon. But perhaps there was another option. Raj, he said urgently, the Zentari function as a collective consciousness, right? Connected across physical space. Yes, according to their explanation, Raj confirmed. And our quantum communication systems use entanglement principles similar to what they use to maintain their consciousness. Understanding dawned on Raj's face. You're suggesting we try to interface our systems with theirs. Commander, that's never been attempted. The complexity alone. It's their only chance. Elijah cut him off. He turned to Vekara. Could your consciousness interface with our technology? Not transfer completely, but establish a connection, a foothold that might be expanded later. The liquid metal face shifted rapidly through several patterns before settling. Theoretically, yes, but it would require direct contact with your quantum communication array, which is aboard the horizon, Raj pointed out. Elijah nodded grimly. Then we need to bring it here. Fast. As another tremor shook the cavern and more of the consciousness reservoir was lost under falling debris, Elijah activated his comm once more. Dr. Winters, I need you to do something either brilliant or insane. Possibly both. The fate of an entire civilization now hung in the balance, threatened not just by natural disaster, but by humanity's worst impulses. And time was running out. Worlds collide. The next 15 minutes unfolded in a desperate race against time. While Raj worked with Thelak to establish an interface protocol between Centauri consciousness patterns and human quantum systems, Elijah negotiated frantically with both Dr. Winters and Lieutenant Commander Pierce. The bombardment has been authorized at the highest levels. Pierce insisted via comm as he and his team retreated to their shuttle. This is beyond your authority to challenge, Commander. Then contact whoever authorized it, Elijah demanded. Tell them we found a non-destructive solution. All we need is time. Another violent tremor rocked the cavern. Nearly a third of the consciousness reservoir was now buried under debris, and the remaining Centauri were visibly weakening, their physical forms becoming less stable, edges blurring, and colors fading. Our collective is fragmenting. Vekara's voice fluctuated between synthetic speech and bursts of harmonic tones. Too much has been lost already. Hold on, Elijah urged. Dr. Winters is bringing the equipment we need. True to her word, Naomi had detached the Horizon's primary quantum communication array, a violation of at least a dozen regulations, and was descending through Zeta-4's atmosphere in a maintenance pod. The small vessel wasn't designed for planetary landing, but it was their only option. 2 minutes to touchdown, Naomi reported, her voice strained as she fought to control the pod through turbulent winds. But Commander, you should know, the Vigilant is powering up weapon systems. They're not waiting for Pierce's team to clear the area. They can't risk any evidence surviving, Elijah realized grimly. Pierce, are you hearing this? They're going to fire with your team still on the surface. Silence greeted his transmission, then. Understood, Commander. It seems my usefulness has ended. Pierce's voice had lost its cold authority, replaced by bitter understanding. My shuttle will rendezvous with yours. Perhaps together we can salvage something from this debacle. As Naomi's pod touched down near the entrance to the underground complex, Raj called out triumphantly, Interface protocol established. The quantum array should be able to establish a connection with what remains of the consciousness reservoir. Should? Elijah questioned. It's untested technology meeting an entirely alien consciousness structure, Raj replied, not looking up from his work. There are no guarantees. Naomi arrived moments later, dragging the portable quantum array behind her. Her eyes widened at the sight of the vast, damaged reservoir and the weakening Centauri. This is incredible, she breathed, before professionalism reasserted itself. Where do you need this? Here, Raj indicated a position beside what remained of the reservoir, as close as possible without submerging it. As they made the final connections, Pierce and his team arrived, their expressions grim. The Vigilant reports weapons lock on this position, Pierce announced. Estimated time to firing. 3 minutes. Then we work faster, Elijah replied, helping Raj adjust the array's positioning. The quantum communication system hummed to life, its components glowing with the same ethereal light as the consciousness reservoir. Vekara placed what passed for hands on the device, the liquid metal surface of her form flowing partially into the machinery. "Connection established," she announced, her voice now coming simultaneously from her form and from the array itself. "Beginning consciousness transfer protocol." The remainder of the reservoir began to pulse in time with the array's lights. The other Zentari gathered around, their forms gradually dissolving and flowing toward the device like metallic water finding its level. "Is it working?" Elijah asked. "Partially," Raj confirmed, studying readings on his tablet. "We're capturing approximately 22% of their total consciousness pattern. It's not complete salvation, but it's a foothold." Vekara's voice came from the array now, her physical form having completely merged with the device. "A chance to rebuild, to evolve in a new direction. That is all we asked for." The cavern shook violently as the first orbital strikes hit the surface above them. "Time to go," Pierce ordered. "Now." They disconnected the quantum array from its temporary moorings, now carrying within it the fragmented but surviving consciousness of the Zentari civilization. As they fled through collapsing corridors toward the surface, Elijah couldn't help but reflect on the bitter irony. They had come seeking new worlds for humanity to inhabit, only to nearly destroy a civilization that had made its home in the most inhospitable environment imaginable. The combined teams barely made it to their respective vessels before the full bombardment began. As they ascended through Zeta-4's turbulent atmosphere, they watched the Zentari habitat disappear beneath waves of destructive energy. "All for some rare minerals," Naomi said quietly, staring at the view screen. "We're better than this. We should be better." In the cargo hold behind them, the quantum array pulsed with life. Different now, adapted, but unmistakably aware. The consciousness it contained had been irreversibly altered, compressed and transformed, but it had survived. 3 days later, aboard the Horizon, Elijah stood before a hastily assembled tribunal. Captain Thorne of the Vigilant served as chief adjudicator, his expression severe as he reviewed the charges. "Commander Reeves, you stand accused of multiple violations of Union protocol, unauthorized first contact with a non-human intelligence, sabotage of Union military operations, and theft of Union property." Thorne looked up from his tablet. "How do you plead?" Elijah stood straight, unflinching. "I plead that we recognize what truly happened at Zeta-4. Not first contact, but first asylum. The Zentari sought our help, and in helping them, we've gained knowledge that could transform our understanding of consciousness itself." Behind him, the modified quantum array hummed softly. In the days since their escape, Raj and Naomi had worked tirelessly to expand its capabilities, creating an interface through which Vekara and the surviving Zentari consciousness could communicate directly with human systems. "The Union Security Council has classified all information regarding the Zeta-4 incident," Thorne replied stiffly. "The official record will show only that you violated protocols during a routine survey mission." "And the Zentari?" Elijah demanded. "What of them?" For the first time, Thorne's rigid demeanor cracked slightly. "That decision is above my pay grade, Commander. But unofficially, the research division is very interested in what you've brought back, not as a weapon or a resource to be exploited, but as a new form of intelligence worthy of study and cooperation." The array pulsed, and a holographic representation of Vekara formed beside Elijah. Not the armored being they had met on Zeta-4, but a more abstract pattern of light and color that somehow still conveyed her essence. "We are grateful for this second chance." Her voice emerged from the array, stronger and clearer than before. "Though much was lost, what remains has the potential to grow in new ways. Perhaps in time, we might help humanity understand consciousness differently, not as something bound to a single form or world, but as something that transcends physical limitations." Lieutenant Commander Pierce, who had testified on Elijah's behalf in a surprising turn of events, nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps that understanding is exactly what we need, if we're to avoid repeating our mistakes." As the tribunal adjourned to deliberate, Elijah stood with his crew and their unusual new ally, watching the stars through the horizon's observation deck. Somewhere out there, other civilizations waited to be discovered, or to discover them. The question remained whether humanity would approach them with fear and greed, or with the courage to recognize new forms of life and consciousness as partners rather than resources. The near extinction of the Zentauri had been a failure of humanity's highest ideals, but their partial salvation might yet represent the beginning of something better, a recognition that life finds ways to exist even in the most hostile environments, and that consciousness itself might take forms humans had never imagined possible. As Vakara's holographic form shifted beside him, taking in the vastness of space, now open to her people's transformed existence, Elijah made a silent promise. This time, they would do better. This time, they would listen before they judged, understand before they acted. And perhaps next time, when a signal came from nowhere, humanity would be ready to truly hear it.